Lovely. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to apologise now for my first slide. I completely forgot that we have 3 screens here, so it is quite intimidating because it's. I am much more friendly than I'd look in the stylised photo. But I thought I'd just start with a bit of an introduction to myself, so you know who's talking at you here and staring at you from the screen. So yeah, as Rob said, oh yeah, as Rob said, I'm Hugh Gullick. I'm Associate Director for NOC Innovation, which effectively means I'm in charge of all the intellectual property that we develop at the NOC and doing something with that that's not traditional academic publications. So I wear a few different hats, which will become clear as I take you through. But in terms of my background, fairly varied. I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, but I have worked in technology companies really all of my career, and that started many years ago in aero engine manufacturing. So I worked for Rolls-Royce for about 7 years, mostly in civil aviation and defence. And then really stayed within that supply chain for a few different large organisations and moved a little bit more into offshore energy with coatings and material science and things. So worked mostly in Europe, a little bit in the US, and predominantly the UK. And as I said, my role really here is around commercialising our IP and technology. You may ask, why did I move from big corporates into this world about 3 years ago? So as COVID hit, I jumped ship and I joined the NOC. So actually, as it happened, I was at a sort of innovation type conference in my last job, and it was all around defence and engineering and aerospace and things like that. But they had someone there who was talking about ocean and earth sciences, and I got talking to them in the break. And this person talked so passionately about the importance of the ocean. It got me inspired to start Googling some facts about the ocean. Of course, my life had been a little bit offshore energy, but mostly 30,000 feet. So I knew absolutely nothing. And the more I dug into facts and figures about the ocean, the more I realised quite how important this vast expanse is to all life on Earth. And at the time, I was going through a bit of a early midlife crisis about what am I doing with my life, working for these huge corporates for 15 years or so. And I came across the NOC. I didn't know it existed, and I lived about 10 miles away. And this opportunity came up, and I thought it's now or never. So I took the plunge and got off the treadmill and joined the NOC. And I'll explain a little bit about our structure in a minute, just to bring that to life. So many of you probably know this, but you know, what is our vision at the NOC? Well, really for us, we're involved in pure scientific research. That is our reason for being. But it's what we do with that scientific research that really brings us to life. But we've got quite an inspirational vision, and it's all around building a world where people feel inspired and empowered to help our oceans. That is what it's about. And we supply really, really good cutting-edge scientific knowledge and understanding for anyone with an interest in the ocean space, anyone who operates in that ocean space. Providing that scientific understanding, we believe, is the best way to make the most informed decisions about the ocean. And that is our role as an institute. So our purpose is effectively to gain much, much deeper knowledge of the ocean environment and help every living thing on the ocean, in the world flourish. That's what we believe we can do. We know that the ocean is the single most important resource that we have as humanity, but we know so little about it. So it's our job to understand that from a scientific perspective and share that with anyone with an interest, anyone who works in that environment. Well, how do we do that? So we've got quite a broad range of capability. You'll see some of it. Some of you will know us very, very well. So I'm talking to people who know lots about us as well. But you'll see on some of the tour a lot of our autonomous equipment. That's one of the enabling ways that we go out into the ocean environment and we capture data to do our science on it. So we've got, last count, I hope there's no one here who's going to be counting this, but we've got Europe's largest fleet of autonomous equipment. Most of that is subsurface autonomous equipment. We do have some surface equipment, but most of it is subsurface, and there's a few little bits actually outside in the exhibition area that you can see. But you'll see a lot of that later on the tour. lots of yellow equipment, which is great. We've got two large research vessels, roughly around 100 meters length. One of them was in last week actually, but just went on a science mission. When they're in the UK, they typically moor up here, but they can work all over the world. They don't have ice breaking capability, but anywhere else they can go. So there are traditional means of getting into the ocean space. We run the British Oceanographic Data Centre out of predominantly our Liverpool site. So that's open access data that's collected by ourselves, but also the oceanographic community at large. We manage that, curate that, catalogue that, etc. So we run that data centre. Here on site, which you will see later, I'm sure, we've got the sediment coring facility, which we run on behalf of the UK science community. So that's not just ocean sediment cores that we analyse there, but terrestrial ones as well. So you'll get a good tour of that, which is great. The library, which is down there on the right, many of you will see, we have that here. We have a long-standing and really proud partnership with the University of Southampton, so their ocean sciences. A lot of it is taught from this site here, hence why we have the library. And we also run the National Tidal and Sea Level facility. So a bunch of different things. But I think crucially for me, what we have between our three sites, our ships, Southampton and Liverpool, is we've pretty much got everything we need to run a truly world-class scientific research institute. And I think that's really important. We're not reliant on subcontracted services for this or that. We can pretty much do everything that we need ourselves. And that gives us some really good independence, which is great. So in terms of our structure, I use this slide to try and explain how we're structured now. But if I just take you back to early 2019. So until 2019, we existed as part of the UK government. So we sat under UK research and innovation, and most of our funding came from UK government, and that was us. At the end of 2019, we became an independent charity, and we set up our trading subsidiary, NOC Innovations. And there were two primary reasons for becoming an independent charity. The first one was complete independence in terms of masters of our own destiny. We could choose what we bid for grant funding, and we could choose what science we did. And we believe, and we still believe, that is the best route for having a really, truly innovative approach. We can decide what we want to do, when we want to do it, and who we want to work with. And the second reason was, if you tend to exist as part of the academic world, most of your collaborations are in that space. Similarly, if you're part of government, be that UK or any other government, you generally have to follow the science that they want to undertake from a national capability perspective. And thirdly, if you belong to industry, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that comes with that. So we chose to be a charity so that we can work without fear or favour with any of these groups from a truly objective and scientifically independent perspective. NOC Innovations, our trading subsidiary, typically that's our route that we work with industry. There's a bunch of legal reasons that I won't go into for that. And I look after that entity as well. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But as I say, that charitable status and sort of independent place gives us completely scientific freedom to do what we want. It means we do have a set of charitable aims that we work to, which keeps us on the straight and narrow, which is great. But any income that we have to reinvest that, and we want to reinvest that in our science for public good. So we don't have shareholders, we don't make tons of money that gets paid out to people or other entities. All gets reinvested back into the charity to fund our science. So it's a really very good feel-good model. One of the reasons why I wanted to work somewhere like this. So moving now to some of the sort of structure and the work that we do with industry, and this is specifically NOC Innovations, our trading subsidiary. So we set this up to work with industry specifically, and also as another channel for taking our science to the commercial world for use at scale. So we're not a sort of separate building. We're all kind of part of NOC. So what we do, really, we tend to try and answer the questions that other entities or other organisations can't answer, and we do that from a scientific research perspective. It's a really simple model. We like working with industry because it's a great channel for impact and getting our science and research and technology out there and in use at scale, so beyond just scientific data collection. And of course, what we provide is some of the solutions, technology and expertise. We've got a really long and proud history of working specifically with the offshore energy sector and have charted its course over the last 30 years at least. But we continue to work in this space, and it's a really, really good collaborations that we have with a number of organisations in the offshore energy space. Our approach is pretty simple. I'm a fairly simple person, so I like a simple approach. We do work without fear or favour. Our role here is to provide scientific, objective evidence. We don't sort of come up with the answer that people want. That's absolutely not what we do. We do focus on what we're good at. It's a really obvious point, but we do say no to working with a lot of different areas because it's just not our area of expertise. So we stick to our science and engineering. That's what we're good at. So that's what we offer. We tend to try and position ourselves more as an enabling partner rather than a competitor. So you could say, well, why don't you go and do some survey work and compete against Fugro? Well, we could do that, but they're better at it than us, and we just get hammered. So what's the point? We don't want to set ourselves up as a competitor. We don't really see ourselves as that. We'd much rather partner with people long term and offer that consultative guidance from a scientific perspective. And that's really why we try and target sort of specific areas where our expertise helps people with their technology roadmaps or their sustainability roadmaps over a long period. I'm really keen that we build our brand. I didn't know NOC existed, and I live 10 miles away. And I think a lot of people who live in Southampton don't even know that we exist. So something I'm personally passionate about is building our brand, and specifically with industry as well. We've got 650 people here, probably the biggest mass of ocean science capability in the UK, and so many people don't know about it. So that's a bit of a personal one for me. And I particularly like the fail fast. We're not because we're a charity, we've got the ability to pivot very, very quickly with our business model, and that gives us a really agile approach, which a lot of big commercial organisations don't have. So I particularly like that. When something's not working, stop and we move on to something else. So just a few examples here of our impact. I'm not going to talk too much about the top one because I know this is Andrew from NOC is going to talk about this, but in the last few years, it's just some examples really. So you can broadly bucket what we do with industry into kind of 4 areas. The first one I would call sustainable operations. So what you're looking at there is some work we did with University of Southampton with a particular camera system on one of our autonomous vessels. That's a capped off wellhead. I don't need to say that to you guys, you probably know that. That was a completely autonomous survey with one of our vessels, which Andrew will talk about. But that is all around how do you take a traditional way of doing something in the offshore environment and doing that in a much more sustainable way. Sustainable either in terms of, rather than taking a vessel out, you take something that's battery powered, or rather than sending people out into the North Sea in the middle of winter, you send out a robot to do that job. So sustainable operations. We have some strategic partnerships. So this is, to Rob's point that he was talking about earlier, a really good example of how you formalise a relationship between ourselves from a research perspective and a commercial partner. So we have a strategic partnership with Subsea 7, who many of you will know, called the Blue Ocean Research Alliance, and the purpose of that is specifically to utilise their operations, their data, their operational time to undertake science, and it's really, really good for them to get involved in the science, and that they use it actually as an employee engagement tool. So when they've got people at sea, they're doing science as well as doing their day job, and it's really engaging for them to think a bit more broadly than whatever they're doing within operational time. For us, it's great because we get access to data and infrastructure at a magnitude that we would never be able to do with the equipment and the people that we have. So we're really, really interested in building long-term strategic partnerships with a range of organisations. Ocean observing, we've really we've been at the forefront of this from a scientific perspective for many years, but we're starting to see a need from industry for constant monitoring and presence in the ocean. And most recently, we work closely with the Met Office, where we utilise our gliders in particular areas of the North Sea to provide key ocean variable data into their forecasting models, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And it's a level of data that is really hard to capture otherwise. So using relatively cheap autonomous vessels to do that. So there's a growing need from the commercial environment for constant presence, and clearly from a defence perspective, there's a need there, which is all I'll say. And then a lot of other things that we do is pure technology transfer. So when we've developed technology, we'll license that to commercial partners to help their business with, it might be a startup, it might be a large organisation, but that's great for us because they're able to scale that in the industrial world. So it's a really high impact for us. So there's some areas of impact that we're involved in, specifically with industry, just to give you a flavour of what we're up to. I think with that, I'll stop. I'm happy to take any questions, but I'm conscious that you guys want to get into the meat.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.